and cows, our livestock is dying.
Genetic mutation of our children.
Genetic mutation of children. My goodness, people are really upset about fracking, that process where energy companies inject chemicals into the ground and break up oil and break up rock to release oil and gas. And the frackers do use some dangerous chemicals and might spill them. State regulation's supposed to prevent that, but the protesters want much more bans, and they also want the EPA to step in. And that seems reasonable in a way, one federal rule instead of all these different state regulations. But Steve Everley, who works for oil and gas companies, says putting the EPA in charge would be a threat to all of our future?
The boom that we're having in oil and gas is largely on state and private lands, because when the federal government is in control, you see declines, you see delays. What this
this boom has been great.
It's been great for workers. It's been great for consumers. People's energy bills are going down. It's been great for the environment by using more natural gas. CO2 emissions are at their lowest level in about 20 years. New York City has the cleanest air in 50 years because of affordable natural gas. But if you put the federal government in control of it, suddenly there's an extra hoop that producers would have to jump through in order to produce that energy.
Right now we have experiments. You have states like Vermont that are just as stupid as my state of New York. Both have banned, for now, frack. I mean, Vermont outlawed it. New York just has a moratorium that goes on forever.
The irony with Vermont, too, is that there is no oil and gas there to produce. There is no fracking going on there. So it's easy for them to come out and say, yes, we're going to ban fracking. 2 months after they did that, by the way, the governor stood in front of a gas processing facility and touted how this was going to deliver affordable and clean energy to the residents. So
where was he going to get the gas from? Other states?
It's either going to come in from other states where fracking is occurring, or it's going to come in imported from Canada. But if you look at some of these other states, you know, deep blue states like California and Illinois, they've rejected this ban fracking activism that's out there because they know there are huge economic benefits to this, and they know that a lot of these accusations, you like to say myths and even downright stupidity, a lot of these claims actually fall into those categories.
There's a case in Texas where the EPA inserted itself in the state case, and they said that fracking was to blame for bad water quality. It turned out the EPA official was colluding with an environmental group?
Yeah, there were, what had happened is the EPA stepped in and said that this house was at risk of exploding because of methane in the water. As it turned out, the methane that was in the water had nothing to do with gas drilling.
The guy's water did catch fire, but it turned out that the landowner had hooked his hose up to a gas vent.
Exactly, and some of his neighbors had actually drilled their water wells into a geologic formation that is producing the kind of gas that they found in the water. It had nothing to do with the drilling activity. The gentleman actually in question who made that order later had to resign from the EPA.
But we have a clip of why. He resigned after this video came out. He was caught saying he'd regulate the gas industry the way the Romans once conquered villages.
It was kind of like how the Romans used to conquer little villages and they crucify them. And then, that town was really easy to manage for the next few years.
Crucify them.
Exactly. After that video came out, he resigned about a month later, and he now works for the Sierra Club, which is an environmental group that fittingly opposes fracking.
Of course, but why should we believe you? You're working for oil and gas companies.
Don't just take my word for it. Look at what the Obama administration has said about this. The EPA has said there's nothing inherently dangerous in fracking that sound engineering principles can't fix.
It won't convince the protesters, and here's what some of them say America should do instead of fracking.
Renewable energy would be best. Wind, solar.
There's a thing that's algae. There's more energy in algae than any other, source.
There's more energy in algae, and you shill for the oil companies just don't want to let the algae people sell their fuel.
Well, if you don't want to take the word from the oil and gas industry, take the word from the renewables companies and their associations. The wind industry has said that natural gas is a perfect complement to their growth. The point here is that if the renewables advocates really wanted renewables and weren't just interested in shutting down oil and gas, they would look at this and say, let's produce more gas because that's what's going to allow renewables to move forward and to grow into the future.
Finally, here's the latest anti-fracking scare. Injecting that liquid into the ground causes earthquakes.
A lot of people in the state of Oklahoma are demanding answers about a huge spike in the number of earthquakes there.
Oklahoma has had more than 100 earthquakes since Friday. Today's only Monday.
People want to know if fracking is to blame.
You're causing earthquakes.
Well, it's easy to blame anything on oil and gas in Oklahoma because 70 out of 77 counties actually have oil and gas production. So anything that happens could be blamed on that. This is one area where the media is getting it just dead wrong. They keep saying it's about
one
fracking.
area. We get it dead wrong all the time.
This has nothing to do with fracking. The National Academy of Sciences has said that fracking does not pose a credible risk of causing seismic events at all. This is wastewater disposal, which is a separate process. Blaming this on fracking would be like blaming a tire fire in a junkyard on Chevrolet.
And also, what it is isn't much. There have been more than 2,000 earthquakes. Only 400 were felt in any way. And what the Oklahoma Geological Survey says is that you barely feel it. If you're walking, you won't feel it. If you're sitting, you might.
These are small events, but it's always better to look at this in full context rather than just getting scared because someone put the F word, that sounds like something you wouldn't say to your grandmother, fracking, into a headline.